Jay here for Stretford, Paddock. This is the Paper Talk. As you can see, I'm in the studio. We're live, so do get involved in the chat and the comments. There's loads of United stories to get through this morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about Rasmus Hojlund responding to some mischief making about the relationship between him and Bruno. Ralph Rangnick, we've got a little story about him and not going to Bayern Munich, which I know it's not necessarily United related, but he's still a big part of United's recent history, so we'll get into that. Also, we'll talk briefly, because we covered it quite a lot last night, about Jadon Sancho, because he's a hot topic at the minute after that performance for Dortmund against Paris Saint-Germain, which has got people some people questioning why he's not at Manchester United, some people rewriting history, some people unmoved by it, to be honest with you. So we'll get into all that. Plus, we've got the obligatory transfer rumours as well. First thing, though, make sure you are hitting like. Hit that like button. If you're not doing already, subscribe to the channel, and you can give us a share as well. Now, as you may have seen from the thumbnail, we're going to talk about this sort of Radcliffe, this revolution, this takeover. Some people insinuating that what's been going on recently with the sort of boardroom shenanigans could indicate that there's been a bit of a takeover. Now, we covered this briefly last night on Paddock Podcast, Paddock Live even, let me get the right show. Covered it on Paddock Live. I wanted to go into it again because there's been a lot of noise today as well on social media, and we sort of skirted over it a little bit last night because we got caught up in all the Jadon Sancho chat. Now, this is from a couple of days ago. You can see here it says about the changes that have gone on. Patrick Stewart, the interim chief executive officer, and Cliff Beattie, the chief financial officer, have decided to leave the club. Jean-Claude Blanc, who's been heavily involved with INEOS over the past few years, will take over until the arrival of Omar Barada. Now, obviously, a couple of days ago, we know that. A lot of people have carried on speculating, and we see a lot of speculation over the last day or so about what this means, and the idea that it's not just the footballing department or the football side of things that INEOS are getting control over. They're getting control over everything. And does this indicate a move towards a full takeover? Does this indicate when you're getting in new CEO, new chief financial officer, when you're making decisions that aren't just around the footballing side of things? Now, when we say the football side of things, obviously Manchester United is a football club, so you could argue, well, everything is to do with football at Manchester United. But unless you've been living in a cave somewhere for the last 18 years, you'll realise under the Glazers, football was almost like, an afterthought. It wasn't the priority. It wasn't what went on the football pitch that they were focused on. It was all the commercial stuff and all that sort of get-up. And this is what Sir Jim Ratcliffe has got his hands on as well. And it just made me think, we discussed this briefly last night, but I want to get into it a bit more depth today. Does this mean that we're going to see Sir Jim Ratcliffe eventually fully taking over Manchester United? Does this mean that basically Sir Jim Ratcliffe, he's just running the entire show? Him and INEOS are running everything, and the Glazers are just sort of sat there as silent partners, perhaps. Let me know what you think, because I've always been a bit sceptical of this idea that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is going to come in and just have a very small part of Manchester United and very small part of influence. Now, then it got expanded, didn't it, when that was the first rumour, that actually he's going to have control of football things. But then people saying, well, what? He's got to answer to the Glazers still if they're the majority shareholders. How happy is he going to be with that? But it seems as though the more we hear about this, the more it seems that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is just basically doing what he wants, and the Glazers are just letting him. So I'm quite curious as to what everyone thinks about this, because the internet buzz just keeps growing and growing and growing with there's perhaps more to this than meets the eye. There's more to this than just Ratcliffe comes in, he's got control of the football inside of things, the Glazers still calling the shots, that's it. It doesn't feel like that, does it? And especially when you're appointing people like the CEO and the chief financial officer. Let me know what you think, because I'm interested to see what everyone thinks, because it's been such a sort of up and down process, this, and it, from United fans' point of view, with the takeover and what's gone on. Because you remember about 18 months ago, which seems like a lifetime ago, when Sir Jim Ratcliffe did that live with INEOS, he did like a live Q&A, and it was all about INEOS and petrochemicals and all that boring nonsense that I couldn't really I don't really care about. But everyone was watching because there was the United angle had come in, and it was being linked with a takeover of Manchester United. This was before United had been announced for the strategic alternatives the Glazers had said in that statement, which sort of mobilised everyone to say, okay, the club's for sale. This was before all that. And I was watching that. We did a watch-along for it here, where people got involved in the comments, and everyone was sort of pro Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Everyone was like, yeah, we've got to get him. He's going to be the savior of Manchester United. Get Sir Jim Ratcliffe in. And he mentioned the fact that, more or less said, United's not for sale. I'm a United fan. If the club was for sale, things might be different, but they aren't. That's the end of that. Then, however, when the club was put up for sale, or it was announced for these strategic alternatives, Sir Jim Ratcliffe's there. Everyone was like, yeah, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, be a great owner, da-da-da. But then when Sheikh Jassim came in, the mood kind of shifted, didn't it? A lot of people preferred Sheikh Jassim because the idea behind Sheikh Jassim was it was a full takeover. There was no Glazers left over there. There was going to be these fantastic new stadium. He was going to invest in all this money. There was rumours that he liked Mbappe and he liked Kimmich and he liked all these other players that he was going to bring in. So a lot of people got on board with that because they were like, look, we can have loads of great players, we can have a massive stadium and we can get rid of the Glazers. Now, I understand why people wanted that. I understand why you look at that and you think, well, that's just, the streets are paved with gold. I was always reluctant and sceptical. I don't want Manchester United to be a sports washing enterprise. I took a lot of stick for saying that, but that was just my stance, and it remains that stance. I criticised City for it, I criticised Newcastle, criticised PSG. Felt very hypocritical to go, well, criticise them, but if we can have it, I'm all good with it. However, that's a different story. It was obvious, though, that some of these promises didn't make sense. I mean, I was seeing pictures. There was one where I think it might be the Mirror, but forgive me if I'm getting that wrong. One of the papers ran this story about United's new stadium plans. And they showed a picture of a stadium that ran from Cheetah Mill to Odsal. Now, if you don't know Manchester, that would basically have been a stadium that homed or housed 4 million people, the size of it. It made no sense whatsoever. And what you do, bulldoze the entire city centre to build it. Yet people were like, oh yeah, this is going to be the new stadium. We're going to get all these players. And you think, well, that can't happen because of FFP. However, fast forward, Sir Jim Ratcliffe then became a pariah. A lot of people like Sir Jim Ratcliffe, emphasis on the RAT. He's going to keep the Glazers in, he's going to be a disaster. Then when it became evident that Omar Barada, forgive me, he's the CEO. Then it became evident that we were going to maybe not get stuck with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, but Sir Jim Ratcliffe looked like the only show in town because Sheikh Jassim wasn't stumping up the money that the Glazers wanted. A lot of people reluctantly began to get on board with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Since he's come in, I think people have been impressed because he seems to be making the right moves. He seems to be bringing in the right people. Now, I'm not going to sit here and go, do you know what? When I was a kid, I just used to dream of the day that United would have Omar Barada and Dan Ashworth looking after us. Those were the men I wanted involved. You don't, do you? I think most of us as football fans are just looking at the playing squad and who's the manager and stuff like that. But when you see people with a CV like Omar Barada's, people with a CV like Jason Wilcox's, people with a CV like Dan Ashworth, I know he's not here yet, but it looks like he's on the horizon. And you look at the way we've done things post-Alex Ferguson, it does fill me anyway with a bit more optimism because it seems like we're doing the things we should have done in 2013, to be honest with you. As soon as Sir Alex Ferguson retired, we should have had these processes and these people or people of a similar ilk in place. We didn't. We gave it to Ed Woodward, and it was a bit of a disaster, and you know the rest. Akash Paul says, so Jim Ratcliffe sacking directors at Man United reminds me of Steve Jobs coming back to Apple, and started paying directors to leave so he could execute his vision for the decade ahead and led to most valuable company. So he says he can see like a similar thing to what Steve Jobs did there. Obviously went back to Apple and, they did all right, didn't they? Adam says, we owe over 300 million in transfer fees. He also says we're over 1 billion in debt. Joe Leeming says Jim will fix it. Jerry Malmin, see little laughs there from the production desk. Yeah, very droll. Jal Malmin says, for the first time, the Glazers have done something smart. Let someone else take over. Jim has actually paid off about 80 to 120 million, I presume that is, in transfer debt. This has not really been talked about. So, yeah, I think the Glazers have done the right thing in getting out of his way. I think that's the smartest thing they've done because far too often they've just been problematic by just not having a clue or putting people in charge who don't know what they're doing. I think you just move out of Sir Jim Ratcliffe's way, let him get the people in place that he wants to get in place, and then you'll have a much better football club and a much more successful one, hopefully. Anyway, just one thing that I'm always conscious of, and I'm sure you guys know it, but I'll say it anyway. I feel like this is going to take a little bit of time, innit? This isn't going to be an overnight fix. You don't get in these people and then next season United are winning the Premier League. It ain't going to happen like that. I don't think it will anyway. You like to be ambitious, but you also have to be realistic. This club is a mess. It is an absolute mess. And these people are going to have to sort it out, and it is going to take some time, especially when you look at some of the other clubs around us and how far ahead they are in terms of their squad, in terms of their performances, in terms of where they're at. In challenging for trophies and winning trophies. We've got some way to go, so I don't expect United to be at the very top next season, but with these people in place and these processes in place, there's no reason why in 3 or 4 years United can't be at the top of football. Look at what happened with other clubs. I know it's slightly different because of FFP, but when you've got a club the size of Manchester United and we get our act together, we can turn things around. And City, the money came in 2008, 2012, they won the title. Again, I get that FFP wasn't a thing there. Chelsea, I think the money came in 2003. 2005, they won the title. Those clubs that I mentioned, though, are a lot smaller than Manchester United. Manchester United have a sort of business model that works. If we start utilising our academy, we start making coherent transfer decisions, and if we get a manager in or back the manager we've got now who can push us forward, then I think United can be challenging where we should be, which is at the top of the Premier League, back in the Champions League and winning Champions Leagues, not just scuffing around 8th place or whatever, wondering whether we're going to have Europa Conference or Europa League football next season. It's depressing. Let's talk about Rasmus Hojlund. Rasmus Hojlund defends Bruno Fernandes amid rumours he fell out with Manchester United captain. This is from Tom Olver, I think, in the Metro. And he says Hojlund says the level of criticism Bruno Fernandes received is unfair and believes the midfielder has proven himself to be an amazing captain for Manchester United. I mean, I agree with all that, to be honest with you. I think the level of criticism Bruno Fernandes gets at times is a bit weird. Like, he's not perfect, no player is. And he can be frustrating. I've been frustrated at times with Bruno Fernandes. But he is easily... It's not even a debate to me, so I'm not even going to engage in one. The best signing we've made post Alex Ferguson. And also, he wasn't pennies, but it's not like we broke the bank for him. We paid around, I think, was it 46 million, rising up to 50-odd million in transfer fees for him. And I don't think his wages were that astronomical either. So, he's been cost-effective. There's only a few transfers you go, well, actually, he was worth it. Not only has he been our best signing post-Fergie, but he's been worth it as well. And his numbers speak for themselves. He's always been at sort of around the top or at the top. Chances created, his goals and assist record since he comes to United is very, very impressive. And I think the one thing he shows as a captain, and you might not like the way he goes about certain things, whatever, he has determination, he has passion, he cares. You can't ever look at Bruno Fernandes as a player who doesn't give a toss. He does. And yes, sometimes he might do things that sort of annoy you, but he at least, I think, he's coming from a good place and he wants to see Manchester United challenging, he wants to see him successful. So there's been reports that there was some sort of feud between Hojlund and Bruno Fernandes. Hojlund's pouring cold water on it, and rightly so. Bruno Fernandes, he's creating chances constantly for Rasmus Hojlund. And I think Hojlund knows that Bruno Fernandes is a very good player, a very good midfielder, a very good creator for him, and a good captain. And all this sort of nonsense as well you hear when people say about Bruno Fernandes shouldn't be captain. Okay, sound. Who should be? Who are you having? Who's the obvious choice? Maguire? Give it back to him. That's a bit of a backward step, giving it back to someone you took it off. Also, if everyone's fit, does Maguire even start? Who else is there? Who genuinely? Casemiro? Come on, his performances have fallen off a cliff. I don't even know if he's going to be here next season. Varane, injured all the time. Luke Shaw, injured all the time. Who else is there? Who else is there as a contender? Kobe Mainoo's a teenager. You're not going to give him the captain's armband. There isn't anyone else for me. I think Bruno Fernandes is the obvious choice, and I think when people lose their mind about him being captain, there's all that anger and bluster and all the rest of it. But when you say, okay, then who should it be? Every other choice is far more flawed than Bruno Fernandes. Richard Hawkins says, Bruno earns 200 grand a week in comparison to Rashford on 300,000 a week. Who do you think is a better value? Jay Motty says, give it Giggsy till the end of the season. Heaven Soul says, Bruno does need to assist Hojlund more. I think it's been clear that the squad as a whole hasn't given him the ball enough, but we've seen it improve in the last couple of weeks. I kind of half agree with that. I do feel that we haven't given Hojlund enough service, but I don't think Bruno's a culprit there. I think you need to look at some of the other wingers. I don't think the likes of Rashford, Garnacho, and Antony have provided enough service for Hojlund. And I'm still of this opinion. I don't understand why we keep playing inverted wingers. I think it's better when we play someone like... I'd stick Antony on the left, mate. I think when you stick him on the right, he's cutting in all the time. I know he scored against Burnley, but his goal scoring record is great. If he can whip a ball in on him with his left foot, play him down left, then he can create more chances. That's my opinion anyway. What am I? I'm not a coach. Who's going to listen to me? Right, go on. Let's talk about the next one. Jadon Sancho. People are loving this, aren't they? The media and everyone. Matthew Cooper here from the Mirror. Loving this idea that Erik ten Hag was so wrong and that Jadon Sancho's amazing and it's a travesty and all the rest of it, that he wasn't given an opportunity at Manchester United. Listen, Jadon Sancho was mint last night for Dortmund against Paris Saint-Germain. I'm not going to pretend he wasn't. We know why Jadon Sancho isn't playing for United, though. It's nothing to do with his ability. He's a good player. The problem was he didn't apply himself in training, according to the manager. The manager called him out. He pushed back on social media against the manager. The manager wanted an apology. He didn't give the manager an apology. So the manager made him train with the kids and the resis or whatever and eat his packed lunch on his own. Obviously, it became untenable. Dortmund came back in for him and he went back to Dortmund. And he's done all right at Dortmund. He hasn't been putting in those kind of performances every week. He's done well. Got him help get him to a Champions League semi-final and put in a very, very good performance in that semi-final. But this whole sort of rewriting of history, like Jadon Sancho has always been amazing for United and Erik ten Hag dropped the ball. I've got to be honest. I've not been saying that for the last few months, so I'm not going to start saying it now after that game last night. I thought we saw the best of Sancho last night, and it was frustrating for me that there's a player that we wanted to see in a United shirt, doing those things in a United shirt, and I don't feel like we ever really saw it. I'll be honest. I don't think like he was at his best under Ole or Rangnick or Erik ten Hag as well, especially that first season Erik ten Hag came in. We know there was a bit of an issue there where he went away, I think, to the Netherlands to get some more training. He came back. And I think we've seen it in fits and starts with Sancho, but he's never quite got going at Manchester United. And despite the fantastic performance he put in last night, because I do feel like that's probably helping him get a permanent move to Dortmund rather than convincing everyone that should come back to Manchester United. What do you know? What do you think? Let me know, because it feels like it's quite split here. Should Jadon Sancho be... Now, did we do a poll on Sancho last night? Yeah. We did. I think it was overwhelmingly... Can you remember? I can't remember. I think it was like 2/3... 70% saying no, he shouldn't come back to United next season. Sorry, I've just been having a conversation with Ethan there. You're probably thinking what you want about. We did a poll last night where we asked should Jadon Sancho be at United next season, and the overwhelming majority was no. And listen, it is annoying and frustrating to see him playing so well at Dortmund. I'd love to see him doing that United shirt. I don't feel as though it makes any sense to bring him back, though. I think it's just not happening for him at United. You may disagree. Let me know in the chat in the comments. Joshua Bowater says, Code Red, a miracle has happened. Martial is back in full training ahead of the Palace game. He'll score against Palace, and then you'll have Martial FC mobilising again, saying, let's give him another deal, get him back. Mark Joy Wiggins says, Dortmund won't pay him 300k a week. He'll want a payoff like Maguire. Richard Hawkins says, do a poll on how bad the puns were last night by your backroom staff. Richard Hawkins there, he's shots fired. Heaven Soul says, my issue is Dortmund will offer a packet of crisps for him regardless. What crisps are they though? Eddie prawn cocktail. I love prawn cocktail, me. If they're ready salted, nah, I'm not feeling that. Do you know what I mean? We need a bit of context. SK says, for me, Sancho was just impatient. If you remember, Anthony, one game after Tweet was injured. Dortmund will also allow him to slack. Can't do that there. Whitbird says, Jay, Sancho is only good 1 in every 3. Joshua Bowater says, love a bag of skips. Adam says, I'd swap him for a bag of Monster Munch. Brian Casey said, all Sancho did last night was prove that he couldn't handle the weight of the United badge. It's a shame. I don't want to dig out Sancho when he's just had a very good game for Dortmund. I think it comes across a bit weird. But I think we have to be realistic. I don't feel, after watching that game last night, I'm like now convinced Jadon Sancho will come back to United and be a success. I feel like too much has gone on. And let's not forget as well, it hasn't just been one manager who hasn't really got a tune out of him. It's been a few. Let's have a look at some transfer rumours. Manchester United handed boost over Leverkusen star. It says here, updates on Bayer Leverkusen defender Jonathan Tah and Fulham centre-back Tosin. You had to move off that when I was reading it. Do you honestly think I'm going to remember that name? Scroll back down, let me read it, because I ain't just going to rattle that one off. I'll struggle to read it. Oh my God. Highlighting the wrong one, I can't cope. I can say Tah. Adarabioyo. I've got that wrong. Forgive me for butchering that one. What's this story about anyway? Let's have a look. Manchester United continue to be linked with several potential new signings, and the two defenders I mentioned there have been linked with us. It says Bayer Leverkusen Chief Executive Fernando Caro has admitted that Jonathan Tah could leave the club this summer. United have been linked with him, only loosely though. Only loosely. It's not like we've been heavily linked with him. There's defenders like Bramthwaite, for example, where there's been far more stories linking us with him than there has with Jonathan Tah. What's the one about the kid from Fulham as well? Is he available on a cheap or free? Keep going. Free agent. So keep going. Elsewhere, United have reportedly interested in signing Fulham defender Tosin Adarabioyo. According to Courtside, the Reds are one of several clubs who are considering making a move for the centre-back this summer. So he's going to be a free agent. Possibly. I don't know a lot about him. I think he's had a decent season, but let me know what you think. Jay Frasconi says, Jay, hope all is well. Whoever has to go, whatever the short-term cost, stopping the power players have at the club, costing us managers year in, year out, has to be job number one. I agree. Other people, I think Marjorie Wiggins say Tosin is a free agent in the summer. So that could be an interesting one. Also, there's a kid from Barcelona we've been linked with as well. Have you got that story? This is from... We've got this via the BBC sort of roundup, and they're saying Barcelona and Uruguay defender Ronald Araujo is deciding whether to sign a new deal with the Spanish club amid interest from United and Bayern Munich. We're just interested in everyone, aren't we, according to the paper? It's just any player who's remotely decent, who's potentially leaving, is linked with United. It's insane. We're going to actually go through some of these transfer rumours. We'll do like a tier list of transfer rumours or something. We'll get onto that. We'll do that maybe this week or next. Let's have a look. Brighton target McKenna if Zerbi leaves. We've got another story here. It's mad how Kieran McKenna is now loved by everyone. And it's like Jadon Sancho. I always knew he had it in him. Kieran McKenna. I always knew he was great. You can see it there. It says Brighton will target Ipswich boss Kieran McKenna if Roberto De Zerbi leaves this summer, according to the Guardian. De Zerbi was linked with United, wasn't he? That seems to have cooled a little bit. Brighton doing okay this summer. They're not setting the world alight. I think in terms of resources and stuff, they're doing quite well, but they're not quite having the seasons that they've had the last two campaigns. De Zerbi's still one of those names sort of in the mix, though, to come to United. But Kieran McKenna, he was hammered, wasn't he, by a lot of people at United. When McKenna, why is he at the club? What's he doing? He's rubbish. People have literally zero idea what goes on in the coaching staff. He left, went to Ipswich, absolutely smashing it, on the verge of automatic promotion. I pray to God they get it. It'll be so funny watching the Leeds meltdown. And he's been linked with Brighton. I'd be surprised if he left Ipswich. I would. I mean, I don't know him. I just think, like, if you're doing something at Ipswich, you're going to get him back into the Premier League. Do you then jump ship and go to Brighton straight away? Or would you not want to try and see if you can consolidate Ipswich as a Premier League club? Who knows? Let's talk about Ralph Rangnick. Says here, Fabrizio Romano, Bayern just waiting for Ralph Rangnick to accept their proposal with announcement set for next week, but he rejected due to personal reasons. Personal reasons. That's such a vague comment, isn't it? Just personal reasons. Yeah, just personal reasons. You know, the reasons that are personal to me. Not fancy it. Bit surprising that he hasn't gone to the Allianz Arena. You'd think that would be the ideal job for him. And it was kind of a stick you used to beat him with a little bit, wasn't it? When he came to United, it's like, okay, this guy smashed it in Germany, in the Bundesliga. He's like the godfather of German football, the godfather of the Gegenpress. Why has he never managed Bayern Munich? That's the pinnacle of German football. Why has he not been there? And he's been given the opportunity, and he's saying no. It's up to him. Don't blame him. But who knows? Who knows? Santa Not says McKenna was hammered by association rather than individually. No, trust me not. There was a lot of people hammering him individually. There's a lot of people going, Kieran McKenna isn't good enough. I remember the chat and the comments. There was loads of people laying into him who just didn't know anything about it. Bucko says, Eccles Cakes in Melbourne. Great stuff. Well done. Eccles on the map, as always. C. James John says, McKenna and Carrick left when they sacked Ollie, I think. I believe that they did so because they knew United was wrong and they had values. Cap or Die says, facts, Jay, I remember. Yeah, because it was a thing, wasn't it? It was like, McKenna, fraud. Carrick, fraud. It was just, I always said it about the coaching staff, unless you're there, you don't know what they do. It's like when Marcus Rashford was scoring loads of goals last season, everyone went, McCarthy that. Benny McCarthy. Is it? It might be, it might not. How do you know? And now he's not scoring. Is that Benny McCarthy's fault? No, it's just nonsense. David O'Connor says, Ralph would want more control than Bayern would give him, in my opinion. I like that. Abhinav Verma says, Adam Crafton also questioned McKenna. He held his hand up later. There you go. There's nothing wrong with questioning him. I think some of the vitriol we saw about him was ridiculous. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks to everyone who got involved in the chat and the comments. We're going to be back later on today with Off the Bar. It's going to be me and two Joes. Bit of a sloppy Joes special. Eh? Can't get enough of them, look. They're everywhere. Anyway, so make sure you are hitting like, share and subscribe. I've been Jay Motty. This has been The Paper Talk. Thanks for watching.